Resume recording. All right, perfect. So again, thank you for everyone joining today. As you can see, we're going to be talking about how we might ignite student engagement and agency using Pear Deck. With that being said, I see that you have been able to join our presentation today. And as we go through the different slides, there'll be opportunities for you to engage with the slides, as well as see maybe how you might implement some of these ideas or resources into your own setting, whether that's as an instructional coach, as a tech coach, as a classroom teacher. Regardless of your current setting, these ideas could be applied in a wide range of settings. And with that being said, the first task on this beautiful day is to see your artistic skills. So who is in the room? Stick figures are perfectly acceptable. Create a self-portrait. What's your name? What district are you from? And then we'll move on. So I'm going to put up a timer. So we're going to have to go really fast here. I'm going to lock this slide after 1 minute. So starting now, you have 1 minute to complete your beautiful drawings and add your name and district.
No pressure, Andrew. Oh my goodness.
Right? Just adding some good challenges for this short time that we have together today. So to add a little extra stress, you have about 10 seconds left before it stops you from being able to finish your beautiful self-portraits. I like the creativity that we have within this group. And so at this point in time, it's locked your screens. That was just a way to get to know who's in the room. It could be an activity you do with your own learners to practice that self-portrait, as well as to highlight the ways in which learners might change the pen size. Because I know when I've had to draw, I always leave it as that default size, which is rather large. It can be kind of challenging to design a self-portrait or to be able to annotate on the screen. So now that we have some of our great artistic abilities out in the group, I won't show that to the whole group. I'll cherish those on my side to view. But as we move through to the next slide here, really get to know you about would you rather. So just another example of how you could start off in an activity with your learners. So would you rather, you're just going to drag a dot to the specific location about which one you would rather do or be. So as you can see here, and although it has warmed up, I'm sure that either of these choices might be very desirable at the moment. But looking at our group, it looks like we would rather live on a deserted island. So maybe we just don't want to be around people given our current reality for the past year and a half. We just want to stay in that same kind of space of just avoiding others. But let's move on to the next one here. And so if we move to the next slide here, you can see that would you rather be really strong or really fast? So we got some people that maybe were not super fast in their past life and would love to be super fast right now or be really strong. So we're actually kind of divided 50-50. I love it. And then one last question here for all of you is, would you rather have French fries or chocolate cake? Tough decision. Although it might be the time of day we're ready for some dessert. I think most everyone is landing on that chocolate cake at the moment. So again, just another way that you could do an icebreaker with kiddos, with colleagues, with staff. As we move through, I'm not going to have you do this one, but I want to show you how it could be a fun resource to share with others. You'll have access to this when we're done today. To do classmate bingo, to kick off right after maybe a winter break, or even to start the year, to get to know your students or colleagues in a deeper level. As you can see here, what would be the challenge is to go find someone in your room. So get kids up and moving. be able to use the annotation to actually draw on those boxes when you found a friend in class or a colleague that has any of these boxes that you can check off. So with that being said, let's move into the meat of our learning today. So I've broken it into 4 different categories. We're going to talk about some magic that you can make within Pear Deck using media, as well as how can we enhance our awesomeness with audio, and then really some of those engagement enhancements. And then lastly, we'll talk about a little bit about feedback. And so some of these might not be new-ish to you, but hopefully a lot of these are ahas that you might have for the first time that you can take back and share with others or apply tomorrow right away. So as we dive into this first one of media magic, so talking a little bit about the ability to embed YouTube, but also who doesn't love an awesome GIF? And so with that being said, to start off on the screen that you're seeing, I'm guilty of this where I go into Pear Deck and I choose to insert the question type of website. I go to YouTube, grab the share link, throw it in, and think I'm ready to rock and roll. However, you see that little square sad box that's not very happy about it. And if I move to the next slide, on your screen, you're going to see the video is not loading. You would have to have learners at the very bottom click the little tiny link, which for young kids can be a pain. For other kids, let's be honest, for adults, it can be also a little challenging to get them to click on the right spot. So with that being said, if we want to be able to embed a YouTube video, when you go to YouTube and you click on embed, it actually gives you a whole bunch of gibberish. What you really want out of all of that gibberish is what's highlighted in red. So if you grab that specific text that's highlighted in red, and then go back into Pear Deck and add that as a website, if I move to the next slide here, what you're going to see is now that video is going to show up on the right-hand side natively so that you can actually play it. I did find out earlier when I was testing through some of these things that if you actually start watching that video on your end, and maybe it was just me, but if you start playing that and I move to my very next slide, it doesn't stop your YouTube video from playing. So just a little caveat, if you do decide to have learners do this and they start playing the YouTube video and you move to the next slide, the audio will keep playing. Now, maybe that was a fluke for me, but it is something to consider if you are going to embed YouTube. So if you do have YouTube playing right now, I'm going to have you pause it because I'm going to move on to the next slide. And it drove me bananas earlier when I couldn't get it to stop playing. So I had to go back in teacher pace mode and get it back to the correct slide. So again, embedding YouTube is a great way to maybe show an example in class, but what I would value about this is being able to put it in student pace mode and let it be an opportunity for students to digest that content on their own time and be able to engage with it as they work through it asynchronously. So moving ahead, as you can see, awesome, right? GIFs are amazing. Now, the issue with a GIF is it's not animated in here. And so if I click to go to the next one, your screen's going to look a little different. It's going to have that little broken frowny face again, likely. This is just showing you that Pear Deck does have this extension that's called Power Up. And if you install that extension on yours, when you go to the next slide, you should be able to see animations in real time. So you should see that here's an example of me incorporating a GIF showing the locking mechanism in action, as well as how a dog actually drinks water. So who would have thought a dog actually curls its tongue upside down, or backwards, I should say, to actually form a little bowl and then pull that water into its mouth and drink it. So when you think about sometimes pictures are worth 1,000 words, if we can find ways to pull in animations as well as video to enhance the learning process, this would be a great example of how you could level up the use of Pear Deck. And again, this could be something done in real time like we're doing right now, or you could certainly put it into student pace mode and allow them to explore these as they go through. So those are 2 of our media magic moments that we're going to talk about. And as we move through, we're going to kick it into those audio awesomeness. So if we talk about audio awesomeness, first and foremost, we're going to talk about how you embed audio, and then also how can we provide some scaffolds for all learners to make sure that it's an equitable access for learners when they're engaging with our Pear Deck creations. So the first one is maybe not new. It's just embedding audio. So for me as a teacher in my design of my Pear Deck, I can go in and click to add audio to the sound, and then or add audio to my slide. And then I can also go ahead and record that audio, and then it's going to go ahead and embed it. So currently on yours, you're not going to have that audio available yet because I haven't gotten to a slide. But to show you an example, if I move us through to the next slide, on here, what you're going to notice is at the bottom right corner, you should see a set of headphones now. And if you click the set of headphones, it's going to show a little media player. It's about 5 seconds in length. If you hit the play button, it's just going to be me saying exactly what the instructions on this page say to do. Now, on your side, you also have an opportunity to write this equation. So if you do happen to feel really mathematical at the moment, feel free to type in what that array might be for that visual that's represented for you. So we'll see how many mathematicians we might have in this group today. We'll see if anyone can solve the answer. Oh, I see some that are taking a stab at it. Perfect. So again, you can hear the audio directions. Now, that's one piece, is you actually have to go through and record the audio for the slides, which might be great. You can add not only the text on the slide for students to see and read, but for those learners that might not be able to decode that, you can also record an audio piece. Now, another piece that does exist, but you have to go enable it. If I kick us into the next slide, you go to peardeck.com, sign into your Pear Deck account with your credentials. And then if you click on my account, not mine, not Andrew's account, but your account, if you go to that account, you can actually enable Immersive Reader. And if you enable Immersive Reader, what that'll allow you to do is get a little icon that'll show up at the very bottom right of the screen. An Immersive Reader will actually read any text that's on the slide. So to show you an example of that, I know we had a friend join us here, so I'm going to pull this back up. I'm going to give a link in the chat. And for those of you that are already in the Pear Deck,
typing it.
What's that? Sorry.
I said you were too fast. I was typing it.
Oh, you got it?
Friend.
Perfect. That's all right. So I know Katie just joined. So Katie, thanks for joining in. If you want to go ahead and access that link that is in the chat box, it'll take you directly to Pear Deck and allow you to jump. Well, since we're in teacher pace mode, unfortunately, you don't have a choice. You're going to go right to where I'm at. So feel free to go ahead and jump on there and we'll keep moving through. So the next slide is just an example of Immersive Reader, and I can see in the chat box that there's a lot of us that are very excited about that tool. It is an awesome resource to, again, create some access to learning for all learners to make sure that those barriers can get removed that might interfere with them feeling successful in the classroom. So this is the same slide you saw earlier, but now if you actually click that little Immersive Reader icon down in the very bottom right corner, one thing, if I was designing this, I would eliminate where it says embed audio, because if you click Immersive Reader, you're going to see it actually reads embed audio. So that's just something to point out. Whatever you want to have accessible for those learners, make sure that you just use that text alone on there. And so I'm going to go ahead and kick us into the next piece of this. You don't need to type a response for this one. I've just given you an example.
Time out.
Yes, time out. Yes.
Andrew. Just wanted to jump in because we have some people in the chat who have used the embed audio, and Bridget last year as a 4th grade teacher used the audio often. And one of the things I want to share with the embedding audio is that it doesn't have to be just the reading of the text that's on the slide. It could be tips or tricks or think about some extra information for your students. And when you're thinking about the Immersive Reader piece, one of the things too, just so you know, it does not pull any of like the graphics. So if you have text that's aligned with like a screenshot, for example, that you have put in, just this little caveat as you're scaffolding and supporting your students, it doesn't necessarily pull that piece to be read for your kids or for your students to interact with. So once again, thinking about how you could use that embed audio to provide those extra scaffolds for kiddos. So lots of great pieces. As Andrew's going through this, we would love to hear from you in the chat how you are using some of these features. So just had to hop in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you doing that, Lynn. It was a great point that I take for granted that a lot of us know that because I'm guilty of pulling in a ton of screenshots. Like screenshots are my friend. If I don't have to reinvent the wheel and I can screen snip something and throw it in to visualize. But I oftentimes forget that it's not necessarily accessible for all learners that might be using some different tools to help them access the information that's in front of them. So yes, thanks, Lynn, for pointing those pieces out. Those are great reminders. And yes, definitely feel free to chime in at any time within the chat box, and feel free, it's a small group, feel free to unmute and chime in and say, Andrew, stop talking for a second. I have something that's way cooler than what you just shared. And that's perfectly fine too. I definitely don't know all of the stuff that Pear Deck can do. I'm always excited to learn new tips and tricks for it as well. So as we jump into where we'll spend a little bit of time here, you can see this is not a comprehensive list of ways to increase engagement when using Pear Deck. But if you think about all teachers throughout the school day using Pear Deck, if they're using it in the same capacity time and time again, kids are going to be so sick of it. Kind of like Google Slides. I hear a lot of my students and teachers in my district where it's like, oh, we always use Google Slides again. And, oh man. And so if there's ways that we can spice it up a little bit, use the same container, but still infuse a few additional elements that level it up a little bit further, it definitely can keep that excitement present with those learners. So when you think about these 6 items that I put on here, we're going to start off and go through some of them. You'll have an opportunity to experience it as the student would if you were using this with your learners. So the very first one is Flipgrid, which is a great tool that many of you might have used, but you might not have been aware that it's super simple to pull right into Flipgrid with Pear Deck, so that you have it within Pear Deck and you never even have to leave that ecosystem. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So what you're seeing on your screen now is it's probably going to prompt you to sign in using either Microsoft or Google. And so if you go ahead and sign in, what you're going to notice is actually it's going to let you record right within Pear Deck. You don't even have to leave to record within Pear Deck. You should be able to use that cue there where it says, how do you pronounce your name? And then also, what is something we should know about you? So I'm going to pause, just me talking wise, and I'm gonna let you take 30 seconds to actually sign in. And if you aren't muted, go ahead and mute, and then go ahead and actually record a short video to see what it is like as a student. Did it work well or not? So I'm going to stop talking. All right, so I see those mouths that were moving look to have stopped, which is great. So when you think about this, it really levels up the way in which I might use Pear Deck. So think about putting it in student paced mode. Now I can scaffold a bunch of the learning process for students where they're maybe going through and watching a video where it's kind of priming the pump for what they're going to be learning. I can give them some practice problems, and then I can ask them to reflect on the experience using Flipgrid to share some of their ahas or their new learning from that process. I can also use all of Flipgrid's great functionality within their recorder to use the digital whiteboard. They can upload stickers, they can do a screencast. There's so many pieces that they can do just by infusing Flipgrid into Pear Deck. So it's just another way that you can enhance the experience for your learners within Pear Deck itself.
And it makes me so excited because it gives that verbal aspect that Pear Deck itself is missing as far as a response option for your students. So definitely all the hard eyes for this one.
So Flipgrid is one. option. Now, the next one, what you're going to see on yours is I have gone to Math Learning Center, and on yours, it's probably asking you to create an example. Now, this one's a little bit more involved as far as what the ask is for you. But oftentimes we're looking for ways where students can make their thinking visible. And what this is asking you to do is to complete the problem. Now, after you've completed the problem of making that number using those base 10 blocks, it's going to ask you to actually click that share icon. And then there's going to be a prompt for you to actually copy the image. And then when I go to the next slide, it's going to actually let you paste that image in a format where all of us can see each other's work. So there's a little bit of accountability to this piece where we need to create a 3-digit number using the base 10 blocks and then click that share icon to be able to copy the image. So I'll give you a little bit of time to build this and then go ahead and copy that image. And then when I move us to the next screen, that's where you'll actually get to share your creation with us. So how about another 30 seconds? And if you don't get the whole number created, that's fine. If you are just exploring some of those tools because you've never used the Math Learning Center apps, that's perfectly fine too. The cool thing about this site is I can go there, I can create a sample problem. So the text that you saw, I didn't get very fancy, but the text that you saw on yours, I created ahead of time, and then it just lets me share it. So just like you, when you click on the share icon, you can actually get a unique link for your creation. And that's what I actually added to Pear Deck as a website. I added that unique link, which is why you're seeing it on your side to be able to interact with it in real time. And so now I'm going to go ahead and move us to the next slide. And on this slide, what I did is I inserted a Google slideshow that was set to anyone with the link can edit. And so by doing that with anyone with the link can edit, you should now be able to find a slide and interact with that slide in real time. And if you find a spot on your slide, rename it. You should be able to right click and choose paste, or you could also do Control V or Command V to paste that image in. All right, so that's 2 out of our 6 pieces that we have done. Hopefully that was working for you on your side to be able to rename and add an item in. I see Lynn giggling, so maybe she made a super.
I'm giggling because Bridget's slide says, I lost my link, but I love the concept. So it just made me giggle a little bit, but I think this is such a great way to think about how to have your students create their own draggables in Pear Deck, because, you know, currently as Pear Deck is situated, you create those draggable experiences and those manipulatives, and then kids have to drag the dots or the icons, but this actually allows students to do the creation. So it's just a total kind of flip on who's doing the creating, and I love it. And Bridget does too. Like I said, we're in the same space, so I get to hear her.
Yeah, no worries. Awesome. Okay, so the next one and the time that we have, so auto draw, when you think about my artistic abilities are very limited. Now your artistic abilities I saw earlier, that was really powerful. I love those drawings, the self-portraits. But now here on your side, what you're going to have is the ability to create an actual auto draw of something that you love to do in your free time. Now, for the sake of time, this is set up very much like the last one, where you would end up actually downloading your creation and adding it into a Google slideshow. It doesn't have to be a Google slideshow, but Google Slides, most districts have access to. You could also use a tool like Padlet that would actually show up natively in Pear Deck. So kids wouldn't have to go to the Padlet. It would actually show up right on the sidebar, like auto draw is showing up for you right now. And it would allow them to share their creations. Because part of the challenge with Pear Deck at times is, as a teacher, I can see everything, but there's power in the thinking of the room. And if I can provide insights or a sneak peek into the thinking of others, it becomes a much more collaborative journey of learning instead of it just being single direction of student to teacher. So now by allowing you to create an artifact that shows what you love to do in your free time, we can add that into a shared Google slideshow that would allow everyone to see what you were thinking about doing in the free time. And the nice thing about auto draw tools is you can use that magic auto draw and create something, and then it gives you a whole bunch of choices at the very top. So if I'm trying to draw a super detailed picture, you might be able to using that magic auto draw, because it's going to make you look like a rock star artist. And then you can customize it. Or the nice thing too is if some students don't want to use auto draw, they can certainly just freehand and use their touch screen device if they have one, or use their trackpad to create their artifact. So to move us to the next slide here, it's going to show you the same thing. Ideally, you would be able to find a slide, upload an image, basically the same process that we just did. Just to show you another example, it doesn't have to be just one tool that you create with. So whereas we were creating earlier using the Math Learning Center apps, I wanted to show you that you could use auto draw to create an artifact in maybe a non-traditional way. So it could be, hey, I want you to draw the setting of the story and then share that into our Pear Deck within that Google slideshow so that everyone can see what you thought was the setting, or, draw the emotion that character A saw in our story. So there's a lot of different ways that you could use auto draw in conjunction with Pear Deck and Google Slides, all mashed up into one to create a rich experience for learners. So next one, we're not going to go through and do these. I just wanted to show you how you could infuse a brain break in the middle of a learning for our students. And this could certainly be something done teacher directed, or it could also be an asynchronous experience. So what you're going to see here, these are some resources that Pear Deck already has made for students in their template library. This is something that you can pull in and make a copy. So you can see here, it's asking you to think about what is the most popular desert in America, and then to do that exercise next to your answer. So it's still probing and asking for some clarification on their understanding, but it's also giving you a task to do as you complete that thinking. So here's another example of, and I can only imagine, like I'm starting to picture what this would look like in a classroom. Like maybe I'll do this in another staff meeting sometime in the near future to see how many of them would turn in circles or how many of them would wave their arms up and down. So it'd be really funny to kind of see them in action. So I'll just go through here again so you can see a spelling example of how they can actually get some movement involved as they're still doing some learning here.
And can I interrupt for just a second?
Yes.
One thing I do want to highlight on those drawing pages, just as that reminder for people, is that oftentimes I think people forget that there's the text feature in there too. So to be able to use that. So just wanted to highlight and point out that sometimes overlooked component of the drawing side of things too. For those of us who struggle to artistically create the words, know that you have the text tool.
Yeah, great point, Lynn. I do think I've gotten a lot of teachers have asked like, oh, how do I get them just to type on something that I create? And it's like, well, you actually have to use the drawing side. Well, no, they're just drawing. No, there's actually this little hidden T in there that you can actually type on top of slides. Okay, so this one, this seems to be a hot button item lately. in the classrooms. It used to be Kahoot, and then it went to Gimkit, and now Blookit seems to be all the rage. Now, for the sake of time, you don't have to go through all this, but I wanted you to see on your size or as a student, you would be able to type in your name, go through and play the task. So again, if we think about how we build a learning experience for our students, Pear Deck's nice to have teacher pace, but I love the option of student pace mode, because I could build a learning experience where students get to watch a video to, again, prime the pump, give them some practice problems, and then use Blookit as an example for them to practice, knowing that on the back end as a teacher, I can go look in Blookit in my account and see how did my learners do. They're going to be engaged with the game itself. They're going to be learning along that way. And again, it gives me the data I need to make some good decisions. And it also creates a dynamic experience within Pear Deck that might not have been what they're used to when using this tool. So how can we spice up that learning in Pear Deck when it's a tool that maybe they use quite frequently? Here's just an example. So this is an actual lesson that I did just to show how you could give some learning with the students. So this was a second grade lesson. They were learning about the different sounds of S. And so you can see here that there was a probing question with a visual there. And then it also gave them another visual. Well, one of the things that you could do if we were flowing through a lesson with learners in real time, here's a couple problems and questions to kind of do some front loading. And then what we could do is we could actually, very similar to Blookit, I can now use quizzes, kind of same format, where it gave them quiz questions that were actually tied directly to that content. So this quizzes that's linked, and again, you don't have to go through and take it, but if you typed in your name and customized the way that you wanted the experience to look, as you got into those questions directly reinforce those S sounds that you had. So not only are you giving that direct instruction, again, this could be a center, it could be an independent work time task where kiddos are going through the content, and then at the very end, you're using quizzes as a way, or Blookit as a way, to do some formative checks where you get an opportunity after to go back and look at the data to see how are my learners doing over the skills. And then one of the last ones is how can we create, since Google got rid of their expeditions, how can we actually create our own? This is Donnie Piercy has a great YouTube video of how to actually create this. You basically just go to Google Maps, you search a location, you drag your little peg man on the location that you want, which gives you these kind of street views. And then you can actually choose to share the street view image. And then you're able to pull it into Pear Deck as a website. And that's where you get to see, so in this example, you're seeing Kinnick Stadium. And so I added some facts on the left-hand side so I could be leading you through this tour saying, all right, friends, so Kinnick Stadium opened on October 5th, 1929. It's home of the Iowa Hawkeyes and hometown hero, which is number 6. And if I move to the next slide now, it's going to move away from that virtual image, but you might be thinking, oh, I know who he's talking about. He's talking about number 6, Tim Dwight from Iowa City, went to the Iowa Hawkeyes. But that's not the true hometown hero number 6. That's this guy that actually had hair and was this amazing punter back in the day. But now, unfortunately, from teaching many years, has this look because all of the hair moved from the top of his head down to his face. So again, you can create expeditions within Pear Deck and provide a way to narrate those for learners and guide them through in kind of that same format that you did with a Google Expeditions kit. So now this is a powerful way that you can leverage Chromebooks within the classroom and be able to create those same expedition type experiences. So enough of the bald jokes. We'll move into the last piece of this in the last few minutes that we have is really that teacher feedback, and then also reflect and review, which is something that's slightly new for Pear Deck. And so the feedback piece is probably something you might be aware of. So as you can see here, this is asking you a question. And so if you type in an answer, one of the things that I can do on your response is I can choose to leave feedback. And as you notice there on your screen, you'll have a little bubble that pops up on the lower right-hand side. So for right now, I can see that Lynn is typing in an answer. I can, as a teacher, I can click to leave feedback. And I can go ahead and type in great job and send feedback to Lynn. And then what she's going to see on her screen at the very lower right-hand side, she'll see that little message bubble, get a notification that you have some feedback. And then she can see what the feedback is that I left. What I would really love is if Pear Deck would add the ability for that two-way communication. So I would love for Lynn to be able to reply back in real time or asynchronously with the reflect and review, so that it becomes that organic learning experience with constant feedback both directions, instead of it just being the teacher that is going to be only giving the feedback.
Yes. The only thing that a student can do, they can mark it as read. But the other caveat I will say is if you're in the teacher or the instructor led mode, as soon as you go to the next slide, they no longer get to see that they had that feedback. So that's the other piece I really wish that Pear Deck would hold on to, is if there's feedback someplace within, oh, that would be amazing. Just saying.
Yes, agreed. So the last piece of this is the reflect and review. Now with this, you can see there's a video, and I don't need you to play the video. It'll certainly be accessible for you with this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to end this session right now, and then I'm going to go ahead and share with you what the reflect and review will look like from the teacher side. And I'll also give access to you on your side. And so I'm going to go ahead and save. And what you're going to notice, and you might still have Pear Deck open, if you toggle back to the screen share in Zoom, what you're going to notice is as a teacher, I see that I have the takeaways, which is different from reflect and review. But if I was to grab this link, it's just one link, and I could post that. If I'm using Google Classroom, I could post it in there. If I'm using Clever or Seesaw or Canvas, wherever you use to disseminate information to your learners, you could certainly grab that link and share it to them. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to paste it in the chat. And so if you click that link, because you're signed in, because you access this Pear Deck using your credentials, that should take you to your learning that took place today. And so with this, I'm also going to open this so that you can see what I see as a teacher. So I have the option now to review work. And when I review the work, the cool thing is that I'm going to have an option to review the work that has taken place within this session. Now, one of the things that I do have the option to do, and I might have opened it wrong. Why is it not? Oh, it's because let me exit out of this here. I think I broke it. I wonder if it's confused because I did this in the past. Because it's viewing me like it's seeing me as a student. Yeah. Let me. I know you can't see my incognito window. I want to see if I can.
Or if you need mine, let me know.
Well, even like since it's the same link, that the issue that we'll run into is it'll still take me to the same location, which I have no idea why it's. I think because I've tested this so many times with my account that it's seeing me like I completed it as a student. Anyways, that's a bummer that I can't show you why. Anyways, gotta love technology.
Well, on my student side, I can scroll through and I can see what my answers were. But the really great thing, remember how I was just kind of like moaning and groaning about like after being given feedback that kids can't still see it. Guess what? If you're in this review feedback or the reviewing and reflecting, you can see the feedback that the teacher left you on things. So it's that makes my heart happy.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me see if I can jump to it from my past session. So it should show up. Okay, it's because I clicked the wrong thing. Way to go, Andrew. Good brain fart there. So what I clicked is I clicked to copy. So hence the word student, if I was, if I had immersive reader, I probably would have figured that out, but I can't have immersive reader right here to know that it says student right within the URL. So as a teacher, you have to click to open Reflect and Review, and you can do that from the screen, or you can go back to the dashboard that you have as a teacher, and then I can choose the 3 dots and choose to open Reflect and Review, and then open it. And what I get from my dashboard now is I can jump to specific students. So if I wanted to go to Lynn's as an example, now I can scroll through and see all of Lynn's. And let's say that I love that self-portrait and I want to leave feedback for Lynn. I can say, this is an awesome portrait. I could say, I am so jealous of all your hair. I have none. And so I can send that feedback. Now, the cool thing is I send this feedback after this activity is already done. If Lynn goes in and opens up her Reflect and Review, that feedback is now going to show up for her. So the nice thing about this Reflect and Review is if I don't have a chance to provide feedback in real time, I can look at this at the end of the day after time's up and give feedback still beyond that and let Lynn or whoever the student might be access that feedback. Again, I would really love if I could get another 2-way communication back after I've left some feedback for Lynn, or even give her the opportunity to make an adjustment. But at this point, it's not a feature yet, but that is Reflect and Review, and a great way to be able to access feedback after the session has already ended. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording at this time.